And here we are.
Yeah, here we are on a blustery Wednesday morning here. It is April 21st, 2021 here at the H2O studio, high above Public Square, along with Josh Kirnie. A little difference of view today, Josh, in that we have technical, we've had technical issues in the last couple of days that make no sense. I think there's a gremlin in the studio, something or other.
There's a ghost.
I got to blame the weather. So I'll be Public Square as we speak here, Josh.
And there you are.
All right. So you had a chance to talk with Scott McFall yesterday.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a good
that was
conversation.
fantastic.
Yeah. How'd that go?
Well, anytime you get a chance to involve yourself or speak to Scott McFall,
Yeah,
it's a good time.
it is.
It's a great time. I do want to point out before we continue, today is the 111th day of the year.
111th day of the year. So
That's right.
is that significant or what?
I don't know. Yesterday was 110th. Tomorrow's 112th.
And what about the first 100 days for the Biden administration? We have 19 days for that, or what's left?
What do you think?
Well, so far, I mean, again, this is the day after the verdict was announced in Minneapolis.
Which verdict was that?
And Derek Chauvin, which verdict is that? I don't know. I'm losing track of all the horrible shootings and incidents that have led to trials. There will be more, but it's a crazy world out there. So yesterday we were talking about angst, anxiety, people on the edge.
Yeah, we talked about that too.
Yeah, and not to mention, people are probably on the edge today here, knowing that summer is so far away. Look, we got leaves in the trees, and so what's going through people's minds right now? How can they get control of their lives, Josh?
Well, the big thing and the subject we discussed with Scott tends to deal with being able to focus outside of yourself and, most importantly, on the events or the outcomes that you wish to happen.
Okay.
So yesterday we spoke to Scott, and we're going to display that interview here in a moment. It is important for everyone to have their attention wrapped and be completely focused on that with which Scott was speaking. Mm-hmm. Being able to read what is happening in front of you. So before you can actually take in this information, you want to be able to put all differences aside. So you want to be able to connect to the information and how it pertains to you now and into the future, how it could pertain to you or somebody else even. All the information is pertinent. It's all good for you. How to, again, not only know what's going on, have an understanding and a feeling of what's going on, and see what's going on in front of you, but also being able to respond to it. And when you have your attention outside of yourself and in front of you, and you're focusing on what's happening, then you can take in the information. And it's to the point that you can take in the information now, and when you revisit this interview, you revisit this information, it's going to build upon itself. This is really cool. It's a really cool concept, and it works a lot. So we do know that a lot of times you'll find certain situations where it doesn't speak directly to what you're going through, but it may in the future. So all the information is easy to connect to and follow through with. And if you just try it on, like with new legs, you just try this on for just a few minutes a day to begin with, and then increase it, you'll find that your life becomes more relaxed. You can be gentle as a communicator. And that's the true way to help people, find what they're looking for.
So you had a conversation with someone earlier who had to postpone their appointment, and you had said that they've gone in and out of this in as far as hypnosis and how it could affect, how it can help their lives. They seem to be skeptical. You deal with that, but yet in this case, the one woman was skeptical, but she came back and brought back her husband. What is it that puts people back in the responsive mode, if you will, and say, "Hey, this is working"?
Right. There's a lot of things that can be scary to people that aren't used to them. And in this case, you have two people that in certain situations have been successful, so they can fall back on that as an excuse to not change the things that, in this case, that are harming them, deeply harming them. So the amount of tobacco use is pretty severe.
Terrible.
So again, it's not something you can twist somebody's arm to do. It's something that they want to do. You want to be able to find a way to shed that bad habit, and having that on the other side of the table here, having that understanding, you have that ability to find out what's happening and gently present it to them and expect them to show you more by the way they act on it is the proper way to get them to a point where they can communicate with you and themselves and allow those compulsions to disappear. So the proper way, again, is through a partnership. As Scott would say, and Scott is the ultimate mentor and the ultimate, I would say from what I've seen, when it comes to the change work, when it comes to the processes that we go through and the evolution, the change that people go through, I've never seen anyone do it in a more caring fashion. And that's pretty spectacular, if you ask me. And being able to just model it and be able to follow through with it and learn from it is something that everybody who's watching right now is going to want to take the chance to do. So what's not, if I could talk, the way to not get what you want out of this is to criticize him. And he was in an interview just a few months ago with a gentleman from England who was just berating him. And I couldn't believe it.
Like a reporter?
It wasn't a reporter. It was another hypnotist.
Oh, really?
And who just seemed like such a foreboding force. And Scott dealt with him so magically. It was almost as if he was leading a dance, still finding a way to get to that ultimate resolution where everybody in the situation improved. So
what was it though? I mean, that's kind of.
I'm not going to go into the details.
No,
of
but
it,
that's
it was
very unprofessional.
Yeah, it was
is what I'm saying.
extremely unprofessional. But remember, it's a different culture there too. So the industry is a bit different everywhere that you go, and it's an industry that's popular in pockets in certain places all over the world. So of course, America and Canada, you have one kind of culture of hypnosis, and then in England and Great Britain, you have another. And then Italy.
So it's different, despite the fact that they use different principles or different approaches to. I mean, hypnosis is hypnosis, right?
Hypnosis is hypnosis, but the process and the industry is different, right? So again, the proper way to use this information, and you're going to notice this theme as well in a moment, is that it is like a dance. It's like a partnership, and very gently and curiously, you want to be able to root out the problem or what's happening or what the person wants to change, whether they can vocalize it immediately or not, whether they're aware of it. As you see from an observer's perspective, I must be excited, and just kind of carefully walk through the process of what they're going through gently, and then help them towards the resolution. And that's what we're going to see today.
All right, so let's talk about Scott. Scott is one of the bigwigs. I mean, I don't want to make comparisons, but he is the Tony Robbins of hypnosis, as far as I can see. And he works with individuals. He works with corporations rather. He's in high demand. His schedule, and right now he's probably helping somebody. That's what you do. You do that all the time, Josh. You help people. But there's, again, the main theme behind it is people need to help themselves. People want this to happen to them. Is that correct?
Right. You can't push a rope.
What's that mean? I don't understand.
Well, you can't push a rope. If you try to push a rope, what happens? It starts winding all over the place and coiling up.
Interesting.
So you can't force people to make the change.
Yeah.
Which makes the people that have the courage to come forward and schedule free screenings or schedule phone time or schedule Zoom time or really ask for help, really be able to flesh out their goals, to see the way that they want their future to look. It makes them in such a better place than somebody that you see in a disastrous situation, as you spoke about last time.
Yeah.
Right. And almost force their way out of it. So you can still give positive suggestion. You can still work with folks that aren't complete volunteers. It's just not something we do in the clinic. Like if you see somebody in passing and you want to give them a word of advice that's careful and cautious, that's not direct,
right?
And maybe something to think about. Maybe allow them to see new options to meet their needs. That's in passing. That's also a possibility, but that's not how the industry is run. So while you want to help everybody, it's important to know that they have to be volunteers. You must be a volunteer to be hypnotized. You must be a volunteer to use neurolinguistics, and this is the truth.
So yes, actually, last time we spoke, my experience with hypnosis was at Oswego State, And had a traveling hypnotist that had been at the college. He bounced around, obviously, and he was literally hypnotizing people on the stage, sending one kid back to his like fourth grade school teacher, whatever the deal was. And he had mentioned that, geez, a lot of the people in the audience seemed to be easily swayed, and he was wondering whether or not the last hypnotist that came into town or at the college might have had an effect on him. Is that possible? I mean, can people be easily hypnotized from one hypnotist to the other, or is one hypnotist more, I guess, persuasive than others?
When you think about it, you want a professional that's in the process or has begun to master their craft. Of course, when you think about it, once you experience hypnosis in a staged setting, once you are aware of what's happening and notice it's not really scary, it actually feels really good.
Yeah.
It makes it very easy to go through the process again. It makes it very easy to go through the process because you understand and you see that it's natural. There's a step by step and there's no risk involved. So I would say that if somebody was hypnotized more than once, every time they become hypnotized or go under hypnosis, even on their own with self-hypnosis, because all hypnosis is generally self-hypnosis anyways, it becomes very, very easy. So it works the same way with the read. When you are focused on, when you are taking in or drinking in what somebody else is going through the process that they're going through it, and how it affects the rest of their life, themselves and others, and how they say they want to change, and at many different stages of that change, then the more they get used to you speaking to them curiously and gently about it, the easier it is to continue to make change for them. So without any further delay,
Yeah.
here is where we're going to enter Scott into the conversation and speak more on that angle, those different angles and different perceptions when it comes to making the read and helping other folks out and knowing what's happening around you and acquiescing, really becoming a part of what's happening around you more easily.
Here's Scott McFall. Let's take a look.
Go ahead.
Today I wanted to talk about, well, we've been doing a lot on sensory acuity, but I wanted to talk about the read and how important the read is and how you learn to do that well, because I've never seen anyone read anybody like you do from a distance, verbally, non-verbally. And I was wondering if you could expound on that a little bit.
Well, it's fun to be live today talking about that, Josh. It's good to see you. The idea of reading someone really has to do with what their nonverbals are telling you. I mean, obviously, if somebody tells you what's really going on with them, you don't need sensory acuity. You don't need to be good at reading their nonverbals. But as we studied Virginia Satir, we find out that, as it turns out, many people are not safe enough to level with you. They're not safe enough. They're too afraid of embarrassment. They're too afraid of scrutiny. Maybe they're afraid of shame. So for a lot of reasons, they don't know how to even be real with themselves, let's say. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up as a heart patient, and obviously there were times when sports were out. So I found myself doing a lot of theater, plays. The beauty of that is you make a lot of very public mistakes. You know, I'd be in summer touring companies, and you'd learn how to play off the other actors, and you could tell whether they were going to get it together or not get it together. You know, you'd be doing all kinds of weird skills like juggling or dancing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to get used to paying attention to all the other actors and actresses. You'd have to drop your ego, because if you were being a prima donna, really bad things would happen. You know, if you were caught up in yourself, you'd screw up the whole play. You'd screw up the whole production. Sometimes there were hundreds of thousands of dollars out in production costs, and, you know, one person not paying attention to the rest of the people would cost you the whole thing. The other thing that seems to help with instinct with the read is having been stuck in the hospital a lot as a kid, which is also similar to Erickson, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're just sitting there watching the nurses, watching people, and you can't really do anything. You can't get caught up in yourself. You're fantasizing and guessing, really guessing in your head what's going on. Excuse the steadiness of my phone for a minute, but you're guessing what's going on with those other people, aren't you?
Yes.
You're just making it up. But you have enough time to check whether you're right or not. The beauty of doing that when you're a kid is you're not threatening. You're just this 12-year-old heart patient laying in a bed or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people will tell you kind of whether you're on track or off track, right? So eventually, I started realizing how much time it took in my office for people to confess what was going on with them. And I found that it was more compassionate to sort of get it on the table or provoke a response that was considerate or confess for them and check if it was accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And I would do that kind of the way that Connie Ray Andreas approached the beginning of reframing someone, where I would say, I'm curious, is it like this? I'm curious, is it like that? And then I would do my best guess and check it. Well, after thousands and thousands of clients with sensory acuity training, NLP training, hypnosis training, eventually that read became double checked with so many people that it became very accurate.
Mm-hmm.
But if you wanted to look at it as a system, Josh, I think you'd say, one, be really interested in what's going on with them, where you've kind of forgotten what's going on with you for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, in the beginning, that happened in me because I didn't want to pay attention to what was going on with me.
Mm-hmm.
I was not having a pleasant experience. It was much more pleasant to focus and guess what they were going through. Right?
Yeah.
So it starts out as almost a problem that can be spun into something really good if you're helping a person to notice what their strategy is now and how it compares with the strategy they would need to get the life they want to lead. So do you have any thoughts about that?
I do. We spoke about this, and I'm glad that, we spoke about it just due to the fact that I thought we were going to have this conversation. This conversation is extremely important to the folks that are watching and listening. When you can step outside of yourself and take true inventory and do it in a loving, caring way, it serves like multiple purposes. And one of the ways that people have gone down that road is because of their own internal strife that's happening, or the things bothering them at the time.
Your audio is breaking up. I had your audio break up there for a minute.
So what I was saying is that, like, it does have, we discussed it and how important it is for people to hear it from you as the true master of reading people and in our craft, that a lot of times it does serve a dual purpose. And when people can step outside of themselves, sometimes they are forced their way out. They force themselves outside of themselves due to some internal strife or some pain, some physical or emotional pain that's happening. And when that is absent, or that is in the background, or not really part of the situation, then it is very easy to be able to focus on other folks.
Good. Well, let me see if I understood you. And again, your audio is breaking up a little bit. But Josh, what I would say is this. Another thing that helps, like, you kind of have a Hollywood looks thing going on, And when I was a young person and I had my own hair, people responded to me differently than how they respond to me now. So another thing that really helps with the read is when people change, like if you watch people respond to Heather versus responding to me, or watch people responding to you versus responding to me. One of the really fun things that we like to do is have me tell someone an exact paragraph and then Heather tell them the exact same thing. And you'd be surprised how many times, Josh, they would say, well, if he would have said it that way. And it was literally word for word what I said.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So what that starts to show is, even if you're good at reading people, even if you're good at understanding what's going on with them, you then have the additional skill that you need of understanding that they may or may not respond to a certain approach. So you got to be pretty flexible in how you communicate with them.
Mm-hmm.
You remember when I was wearing the big handlebar mustache because I was playing Ren Fairs a year or two ago?
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe how many people were freaked out by the fact that I was wearing that handlebar mustache. Now think about how long I was a corporate hypnotist, seeing, literally 150 clients a week in multiple locations with staff, looking like I worked at a computer company or something.
Uh-huh.
And if I change that one little thing, it changes whether or not they can trust that read, whether they'll believe that read or not. So there's some interesting realities in terms of not just how good your perception needs to be or how good you need to be at checking your interpretation, but also, Josh, how flexible you need to be to come across right to that person.
That's an
Does
important
that make
point.
any sense?
It makes great sense.
It is.
And that's an important point about the flexibility key that comes with making the read and making sure that the read is being received or is available to the person due to the circumstance, due to moving my hand back and forth here, due to the situation and how you present the presentation. That's what I wanted, the presentation.
Right, right. So in training other people to do that presentation, you'll notice that at certain times in the seminars, I'll be very corporate or very conservative.
Mm-hmm.
At other times, I'll literally show up wearing a top hat and carrying a cane.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about what you thought was so amazing about the read, what was your big surprise about what it could accomplish?
Oh, in the beginning, I didn't think it was something that was real. And then I realized, as watching you and learning from you and others in the group that have been doing it successfully, I noticed that what it shows is almost doorways to different levels of suggestion that is necessary or that creates a possibility for change. So it almost shows like to me, when I think about that, I don't know, I see it visually in my head. There's almost like different layers to the read, and one might be attached to the other, but all the reads show situations that create possibility in receiving and giving suggestion.
Let me simplify what you just said and see if I understand it.
Okay.
They can't think you don't understand if you just proved you understand.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's a big help.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that's true is everyone likes to talk about Ericksonian hypnosis as if they actually know what they're talking about. And one of the powerful things that Erickson loved to do is called utilization. Utilizing what's going on with the person as the foundation for the next suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best utilization stories is in the book My Voice Will Go With You. And that story is Walk a Mile, where he's utilizing the challenges and the conveniences that a retired police officer is going through in order to accomplish that person being trapped into taking action. And when Erickson is doing this utilization, it isn't particularly nice because the retired police officer is trapped into having to take action. And the reading what's really going on with someone, whether they told it to you or not, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
Let's face it, if you can't read what's really going on with them, you can't utilize what's really going on with them. You can't take their experience now and braid it in with the suggestions you're doing for their future if you don't see and interpret what's going on with them accurately. And if you only do that with your ears, that's very disrespectful to the way the nervous system works, because there are so many automatic behaviors. You don't really have to think about tying your shoes. You may not remember the effort of riding a bike. Things become automatic quite quickly in our life. And so to expect a person to be able to verbally report about themselves with extreme accuracy is really sort of a fantasy, like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. So as a mature, caring healer, this is creating a terrible problem for us, because we need to be able to read that person without vanity, without projecting anything on them, which is almost impossible. So it's a never-ending challenge to get better and better at reading what's going on. And most people, you know, they want to feel so valuable that they get superior when they're doing it. You know, I'm sure I did when I was in my teens and 20s myself. And that wrecks the read, because you can have contempt for a problem that someone's going through, but you can't have contempt for them.
Right.
And the minute we start to feel superior while we're doing this, the condescension seems, you know, creepy. So it takes a lot of practice to be able to do a read and stay in a mood that makes the other person happy you're doing the read, instead of threatened. Remember, there's something in magic and mentalism called cold reading.
Yes.
Which is to state general truths that the person will think are amazing. But it's sort of a deception in the sense that it's a fishing expedition called cold reading. Cold reading is not what I'm doing. You know, what I'm doing is a little different. It's more knowing what the person wants to accomplish, having the awareness to some degree of the obstacles that would prevent them from being able to do it. And that, with that information, then watching their nonverbals and making best guesses about what they're going through until those guesses are helping that individual put their motives on the table. So it's not meant to be even remotely psychic. It's meant to be connecting and insightful, perhaps.
Yes.
So what did you see that made you know it was a valid thing instead of cold reading?
What I saw was the physiological change that people would go through when you went from the read into just the beginning of the suggestion, almost teasing it, bringing the problem to the surface, and then finishing it off and then testing. And also with care at the back end of the suggestion, I think I'm getting way ahead, but this is what is coming to my mind, is future pacing into different challenges and conscious and then later unconscious competence of being able to do it consciously and then do whatever they need to do, the change being conscious and then unconscious later. But in the beginning, the attitude that revolves around really audiencing somebody and then kind of letting it set in what they're going through, that's the biggest takeaway I've had in the last couple of weeks.
Cool. I can tell you one of the big problems for a person who's good at the read. The read is meant to help people stay relevant to their outcome and relevant about what the challenges are. Okay. So there are people who believe I'm the most patient person they ever met because the project was staying relevant and therefore I was being patient, let's say. On the other hand, when demonstrating impatience for irrelevance, we run the risk of someone thinking you're incredibly impatient. So when we're doing a read, we've got to be artful about not looking impatient just because we're helping them get on a relevant point. And in order to help with that, you might set up conversational traps like, is it all right with you to decide to stay on the relevant point that will help you? Or would you like to be lost in distractions and have a lot of time get burned up? I mean, how do you want it to go? You know, and help the person to make a choice to stay on the relevant track, let's say. because we can really impatient. We can look really impatient by accident because of the person wanting to talk about whatever they're wanting to talk about, and it may not match what will help them the most. Is that making any sense?
It makes total sense. It's sinking in, and I bet our audience appreciates it too. That last suggestion, that vaccination, as you called it, really makes a lot of sense, and I think that would clear up a lot of issues, especially with working, me personally working clinically. I really appreciate that.
Well, you know what I think? Cool. Well, you know what I think is we can enjoy an even better planned version of this, because I know we are doing this at a later time than we expected, and I'm literally in my doctor's office and have to walk into an appointment. But I sure enjoyed talking to you today, Josh, and I think we'll have a good time maybe exploring and teasing out more about this subject in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Well, that was interesting. He was in his car. It looks like he was in his vehicle. That's how busy this guy is. He was literally on an appointment. But you just visited him not too long ago, and Scott is a young man. He knows a lot. So what do we take from that, Josh?
Well, first, what I would say is there's no way I could have introduced him adequately for what we just heard.
Right.
So please forgive me. He is, if you have those feelings, if you notice that you got to visit in with some feelings that felt really good and solid, if you got to really have some realizations, you aren't alone. That's how it works. Mm-hmm. And he was not just speaking to Glenn and I, he was speaking to everyone who's a willing participant. Everyone who's a willing participant and watching this now can take something away from that, can actually adopt a certain set of processes or a feeling, a thought. Most importantly,
Josh's phone has been going off all morning, by the way.
it seems to only go off when we're on the air.
Yeah, of course. It's, Murphy's Law.
So,
Just like the white camera. Go ahead. Sorry.
that's a lie. It goes off all day.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys.
Probably does.
So when you have that, you allow him to speak towards that picture in your future and help you improve upon the communication that will take you down that path, then you can come back and revisit it again and have the same or deeper effect the next time you speak to him. So again, Scott is the mentor of mentors. He's the trainer of trainers, and his life has revolved around reaching people in many different tools and aspects of what he does. You mentioned Tony Robbins. The difference between Scott and Tony Robbins is Scott doesn't do it for publicity. Scott does it to help people. Mm-hmm. And Tony's a brilliant guy.
Yes, of course he is.
Denying that, but there's
He's an egomaniac, though.
Maybe. I've never met him. I know he's super tall.
Yeah. He's got a big head, big jawline.
Big everything.
Yeah.
So we see with those two men that there's a different motivation behind what they do. And it speaks to exactly what this topic is. What is your motivation? Does it involve other folks? Mm-hmm. Do you notice that the better that you involve yourself with other folks, the more you connect, the easier it is to get what you want. The more you connect and see yourself in others, the easier it is to receive what you need to in order to go to the next stage of life. Now remember, this isn't for everybody. A lot of people would rather go about their daily lives, complain about certain things, as we say, bitch and moan, and have the cycles where they need to release tension, have the cycles to where they involve themselves in vice that allows them to release tension and then start all over the cycle. But people that are sick of that, people that want something more for their life, people that want a new career, that want new relationships, that want a new lease on health, right?
Right.
Those are the folks that are going to reach out. Those are the folks that are going to love this, and they're going to have fun with it. So now I want to touch on one more thing here.
Yeah.
And this is actually going to go into what we might talk about a little bit with current civil unrest.
Yeah.
Everybody feels unrest at some point, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a bad thing when you act on it. So Fritz Perls was a psychologist. I am not a psychologist, nor do I want to be. But Fritz Perls was one, and he passed in 1970. Before he passed, he had a few gems for us that he wrote down, and he too fleshed those things out. Today, what I want you to consider is the definition of maturity. Okay? And there's lots of pejorative use of the word maturity. Right? It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But when you want to improve your life, the first thing that you want to do, and you have to do really, if you want to go a certain route, is realize that maturity is defined by handling frustrated desire alone. And that is without any kind of outburst or escaping into dissociation or escaping into, I don't know, vice, compulsion. So remember, it's very human to go through frustration. But remember, or frustrated desire in this point. Remember, the way you handle frustrated desire is going to determine how nice your life is, how stress-free your life is, and how you handle other folks. So the definition of maturity, again, is handling frustrated desire alone.
I don't get that. Explain that.
Frustrated desire, if there's something that creates a certain tension inside of you,
Okay.
a worry, a stress, and anxiety, and you can think about that now, how do you handle that normally? Do you call somebody up and yell at them? You call somebody up and cry at them? Mm-hmm. Do you go outside and smoke 2 cigarettes?
Right.
Do you go get drunk? Things that dry fast,
Right.
Is there a sexual compulsion? Anything like that.
Right.
Right. So when you can handle what caused that compulsion alone, that's when you're reaching maturity. Now, it's something you want to do and take a broad stroke with this, a big picture of it, because nobody does anything perfectly. To be effective, you want to continue to allow yourself the luxury of handling that frustrated desire alone. And then realize by stepping through that frustration, that's the direction you want to go through to make long-lasting quantum change, good feeling change. So on the flip side of that, witnessing somebody going through frustrated desire and having them ask for help directly or indirectly, that is where the read comes from. That is where the ability, where you want to be in a place of complete care, of genuine care and curiosity when you focus on somebody that has gone through something, you've probably gone through something pretty similar as well. So it makes it easy to relate to them without judgment, and with being able to separate their self, their identity, their person from what's happening and how they're acting out. And there is where the read, as we just heard, that's where the read is most important. So that's it.
Well, all right. So here's my 2 cents. Again, it's more than losing weight. It's more than quitting smoking. Scott's not going into corporations and telling the employees this is how you stop smoking.
Sometimes we are.
Okay, I'm sure, but there's always something within the inner mind where hypnosis can come to play and correct things. And yet you say you're not a psychologist, and you kind of downplay that. I don't get that, Josh. Why is that?
Because we're dealing with context and not content.
All right. Well, that's completely over my head because
No, it's
both,
not.
both of you are helping each other, right? Or helping others, I should say.
We'll go into it right now. It's very
Yeah.
easy. It's simple. You'll get it.
Yeah.
So context is the step-by-step process you go through, your thought process that you go through. So again, that's why people feel so safe in the clinic, because they don't have to give their innermost secrets.
Really?
They have something that they're going through that had a root, a beginning.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And
yeah.
it's a step-by-step process.
Interesting.
And the details don't really matter. They matter maybe about 7%.
So another way, wait, let me just get into, you're not going to get into, okay, I'm smoking because my mom beat me up when I was a kid. You don't need to get into that. So people are more comfortable with not getting so personal about their problems, about their vice.
Right. So in that situation, it would come to pass when I was asking questions that it was attached somehow to one of their parents.
Right.
And there was an actual beginning when their unconscious mind adopted that need or that release through smoking a cigarette. And that's the step-by-step process they go through when they decide to smoke.
Isn't that something? By the way, did you ever smoke?
Yes.
Did you? Okay. Oh, great. All right. So did I. I'll tell you the satisfaction I got out of smoking.
Okay.
It got me out of the office.
Yes.
And we talked about this
Yeah.
recently. It's an excuse in many, many ways to hang out with the other smoker, so you can relate to someone with a similar interest.
You can connect, right?
And remember, the smoking issues, the restrictions, I should say, started in like the early 2000s. So people had to adapt to that. So then, let's all rebel together by smoking outside in the parking lot and talking about the boss and whatnot. So there's an excuse level there. There's no question. So when you smoke, and by the way, I used to love smoking. I thought it was great. Thinking about it now makes me sick. I wish I hadn't done it. I still have ill effects from it, and not to mention the money. So again, people smoke because it's convenient, it feels good, it's the worst thing in the world for you, and yet we still do it. And now we have millions of dollars spent every year on commercials with people with half a face or dead at 35, heart disease by the time they're 40. And yet people still won't look at all that stuff. So what is it? I mean, obviously you got hypnosis, but why is it so friggin' difficult to get people to stop?
Oh, I don't think it is at all.
I still see a lot of people smoking.
Well, if they want to quit, they can come see me.
Yeah. Give them the phone numbers, Josh. I keep on wanting to call you Scott, your mentor. What's your phone number, Josh?
It's 315-432-1514. 315-432-1514. Also, you can reach me at 816-357-8778. So you can't force people to do anything and
Right.
have them really take it in. I mean, there's, of course, extreme versions of that where you can. But in real life, day-to-day life, as we walk around, as we walk through the snow today and the sunshine again tomorrow,
Yeah.
there really is, you have to be in agreement. There has to be volunteerism, right? They have to be in an agreement that they want to drop what they're doing that's destructive. So dealing with cigarettes is like dealing with a light switch. If you have a good candidate. Now, we have free screenings because not everybody is in a place where they can consider themselves a good candidate.
Right. Good point.
And but if you do want to quit smoking, I'd be more than welcome to talk to you about it.
Free screening. So someone comes in,
Screenings.
and that's what makes them comfortable, but that also qualifies them for, in your eyes at least, whether or not you can actually work with them. And it demonstrates to them whether or not they're a good fit for you. Is that a good way of putting it?
Yeah, we have a great office here in Watertown. We have a great setting in Kansas City, and our clinic in East Syracuse is the oldest in upstate New York.
Wow.
So yeah, we've seen as a group, as a clinic, we've seen tens of thousands of smokers. We have lots of stories about people that came in, thought all was lost, and you're welcome, more than welcome, to come and read every single one of them if you'd like to make sure that you can relate to them. And we've had people that smoked 5 packs a day. We've had people that smoked 3 cigars a week, and anything in between.
Right. Right.
The one thing they had in common is that they could level with the fact that they were harming themselves, that they had people that were depending on them.
Right.
They had folks that loved them, and they were throwing money down a hole that could be spent on things that are fun. Like,
Right.
we're not even talking about, oh, you could do so much with that money. We're talking
the
about
money.
How about a nice car?
Yeah.
How about a new hobby?
Right.
How about travel?
How about less time in a hospital 10, 20 years from now?
How
Because
about less
ultimately
time
that's
in the
gonna happen.
hospital?
And how about this? How about your grandchildren don't want to be next to your grandpa because he smells like cigarettes?
That's right.
Like
That's
Forrest
right.
Gump, he smelled like cigarettes.
Back in our time, back when we were kids, you can even imagine how common it was for people to smoke in the house,
Oh,
and they'd have a
smoked on a
distinct
plane.
smell.
I smoked on a plane.
I smoked on a plane too.
Did you? Yeah, I smoked on a plane.
Not in
too.
America.
Yeah, well, I was on my way to Barbados, but again, that was like in the '90s. That was yesterday. I smoked on a bus.
Some planes still have ashtrays.
Yeah, they were. Remember the ashtrays they would have in the back seat? I mean,
Yeah,
just
of a car.
smoking was such a part of our culture.
That's right.
Especially when you saw brave soldiers during World War II smoking and endorsing Lucky Strike. And again, at the end of the day, no one was worried about nicotine. No one knew the harsh. I don't know how we
I'm
didn't
sure
know that
somebody
by
knew
smoking
something.
wasn't harmful to your health. But we were worried about a lot of other things, like the liberation of the world.
Yes.
And that's why these are things that we'll talk about in future episodes here of the Get Real podcast, by the way, which I failed to mention from the outset.
Get Real podcast.
Here on a blustery Wednesday morning, April 21st, 2021. Josh, thank you very much for being on your Get Real podcast today.
The Get Real podcast with Joshua Kirnie, hosted by Glenn Curry.
There you go.
On April 21st, 2021.
Yeah, doesn't it look like April up here in the north?
The 111th day of
Spring
the year.
in the North Country.
Here it is.
Okay, folks, glad. Stay tuned here for a Get Real podcast here from the H2O studios, high above Public Square here in Watertown, New York. You have a great day.